What's up, guys? Brady here, coming at you with a review of the new Lamb of God record, Into Oblivion, released a couple days ago now, Friday the 13th. For almost 30 years now, Lamb of God has been one of the most consistent bands in the new wave of American heavy metal. I just did that discography ranking for them, so if you like this review and if you want to see my thoughts on the band's entire back catalog and how I would rank all of their albums, I highly recommend checking that video out. But like I said in that review, it's really impressive just how much of a big name Lamb of God is, despite the fact that for the majority of the career, they've just been so uncompromisingly heavy. They really didn't do any clean singing until 2015, and they were massively successful in the mid-2000s. So that says a lot about this band's talent. But that being said, their last couple of albums haven't done a whole lot for me. They just felt a little bit undercooked and kind of like it was just Lamb of God going through the motions. But I have been massively, insanely excited for this record just because of how fucking awesome the singles have been leading up to it. You hear it right away on the first three tracks on here, just because the first three tracks were all singles. The title track is the opener on here, and what a way to start this album. I love the dramatic, climactic lead sections that just sound so fucking cool over those stomping rhythms underneath it. This then leads into a really groovy riff, and then you get that genty pre-chorus almost, which both of these things will become a recurring theme throughout this album. It's got a good chorus, good lyrics, good vocals, all of this stuff I feel like I'm going to repeat throughout, but this is just such a great way to start this album, and it's always fitting and nice when, you know, the first track of the album kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album, and I very much do think that's the case here. There's a little bit of everything on here. Then you get to track 2, Parasocial Christ, which it's always bittersweet when a single ends up being the best track on the record, and that's very much the case in my opinion with this track. I fucking love this song. It just comes right out of the gate swinging with that steamrolling intro. And what I love most about this song, how it's nonstop grooves the entire time. And the riffs and grooves themselves, they're constantly evolving to where it's the same ideas being played, so it's familiar in that sense in a good way, but at the same time, it never quite gets old because they're always kind of taking that idea and doing something different with it as the song progresses. Even just in those verse sections, when you get that really catchy, groovy verse riff, but then the drums underneath it, they keep switching up, and it allows for just the part to feel really different despite the fact that the guitars are doing the same thing throughout it. Art Cruz is a great drummer, man. I think people are just really hard on him because they're still hurt that Chris Adler left, but I think he's a very worthy replacement of Chris Adler. And this is coming from a drummer, too. But no, this song is just fucking awesome. Halfway through, then that's when the more mid-tempo type grooves start to really take over. And those are just as good, just as crushing, maybe even more so than the first half of the song. And there's a short and sweet, but sick guitar solo that comes in the bridge that kind of ends and then reappears when the music kicks in. I thought that was really clever. And I like how the song also has kind of a somewhat eerie ambient style outro. I think that was very fitting of it. Kind of adds a little extra dimension of mood to the song, even though it's at the way end. And then track 3, Sepsis, the lead single, is another just killer track on here. A great choice for the lead single, just because I think it kind of switches things up. All three of these tracks feel like they feel like Lamb of God, a little bit more reinvigorated and a little bit just more freshened up compared to their last two albums. But Sepsis is just the sludgy, really bassy track for Lamb of God, which is saying something because historically Lamb of God have very much undermixed their bass. But not on this track. This track, you hear it right away. It's very prominent, very at the forefront, and it sounds great. And also the vocals, too. Randy's vocals on this track, at least in those verses, they take on almost an aggressive, angry preaching style, I want to say. They have a lurking quality to them almost. But then when Randy's screams just crash into that main riff coming back in, that's just such a powerful collision both times it happens. The main riff is fucking sick. Again, it brings in kind of a sludgy influence, and it's got that real dissonant bite at the end. But then around the halfway mark, the song really transforms, and that main riff actually gets sped up ×2, is essentially what they did when it really, the tempo really picks up. And then you get another sick riff after that, and then there's this crushing breakdown at the end of the song. This is such a killer song, a great choice for a lead single. And the rest of the album, for the most part, really follows suit from where these songs kind of set it up. Blunt Force Blues, that was the fourth single. That comes in a bit later in the record. But The Killing Floor, that's track 4 on here. That song also does a good job of just keeping the momentum going. It's got a series of, again, pretty memorable, pretty catchy, groovy riffs. It's got some tremolo riffing in the pre-chorus that I think is very effective and gives that nod to the more extreme side of Lamb of God's music that, we heard a bit more in their first couple of albums. It's got a real sinister vibe to it, and then the chorus riff is another one of my favorite riffs on the album. Just super fucking groovy. And I like how it kind of evolves throughout. Again, kind of like I mentioned on Parasocial Christ, because it's a bit thinner, but still hard-hitting in that first chorus, but in the second chorus, it comes back, and it's a lot more full-sounding. And I also really like that nod to just straight-up gent in the breakdown. Like, that breakdown is very much something you would hear on, like, a modern metalcore record. But I think it actually works really well on here. And it does split things up, because they never quite overuse that idea. In addition to that, you also have tracks that kind of really switch things up for the band, like Elvakio, track 5. That's a song that emphasizes more of like a moody and somber even approach at times. It's got like a cooler dynamic between the clean vocals and the screams. The verses are sung mostly clean, but then that chorus, when it does hit, it sounds really powerful. And I like the up and down dynamics that this song employs. I also think a song like this, it came in like right at the perfect time, because the first 4 tracks are all pretty heavy, and then this track kind of just splits things up nicely. And I think, this track is probably going to get some backlash from fans just because it's got some clean singing on it, and it's kind of melodic. But I think what people fail to realize is that songs like this can actually really add to the heaviness of the entire album. That's why I always emphasize and praise dynamics on any metal record, because if it's just heavy stuff the entire time, the album is always way up here. Versus when you have a song like this, it kind of has that chance to dip down, and it gives the listener a chance to breathe, and then when it gets back to being heavy, it hits way harder. This track is that perfect balance in the sense that it can stand alone on its own as like its own song, as opposed to if some bands were to incorporate like ambient interlude style tracks, which a lot of bands try to do, and that never quite works for me. But this track strikes that balance between having that and complementing the rest of the album, emphasizing the heaviness in other tracks. And this is just such a well-executed song. Randy's like falsetto vocals that he does after that first chorus, the ooh-oohs, actually sound really, really good. And who could have predicted that? And then I also think it was a really good idea for them to cap off this song with only 2 choruses. I think if they went for a third chorus, it probably would have felt too long, and it appears that the band kind of sensed that as well. So hats off to them on that one. As far as other tracks on here that kind of switch things up, the track Bully later on, it opens with kind of like this eerie, to me, like Chevelle influenced guitar part before it kicks into like those cracking snare drums, and the heaviness comes back pretty much right away. It's got some really catchy vocal cadences that work well with what the drums in particular are doing underneath them. And this is probably like one of the most unpredictable songs I have heard on this record. There's some vicious screams from Randy in the bridge, and it's a lot more dynamic in the sense that it's less predictable structurally, just in its parts. The verses are kind of always switching things up. The dissonance really comes in at the end of the track, and we'll have to forgive the Dancing with the Devil lyric that comes in the chorus, which is just one of the most overused lines in rock and metal, period. But aside from that, the lyrics are pretty much a 10 out of 10 on here. I'm going to get more into that later, but 1,000 Years, that's another track that really switches things up. This one really has that back and forth dynamic between the cleans and the screams, which is something that I think the band could do more of, because as of right now, they've really only done songs that are like, mostly clean, like in the case of Overlord, or you got a track like Memento Mori where the clean vocals start the song. But I like that they can, on this song, kind of do both, and it's more back and forth. It makes the song a lot more dynamic. The main riff has like that southern tinge groove metal influence that I like, and there's the cowbell that actually works really well. Randy also brings back some of like those angry like preaching vocals where it almost sounds like he's kind of like making announcements, and it works really well. Just this song is all over the place, and it really like takes the best parts of all of this album and combines them. Divide Destroy, the closer, is another great one. It's got kind of like that moody intro that just leads into being a straightforward heavy track, which is something we've heard from the band quite a few times, but it works well in this case. It's got one of the best riffs on the album, actually, to start the song. It's got this towering chorus where you listen to it and you visualize being at the bottom of an avalanche coming towards you. And the bridge section has this cool, like, emotional dynamic going on where it's got the heavy riffing, but the more kind of emotional, dramatic lead sections over it. I think really the only track I'm not super into is the track St. Catherine's Wheel. Because with this one, I think the riffing, it takes on more of like a techie approach, which it sounds fine, but I feel like the band kind of sacrificed the grooves and the memorability with that one. And overall, like, this is just a lot less memorable of a song in its riffs and its refrains. It's a lot like more of I don't want to say stripped back, but it's one of the less heavy tracks on here, and it just kind of, you feel that as a listener, it's just a lot less intense. You could maybe say the same about Blunt Force Blues. I still like that track because I like the riffing in it, and it's got like this war siren that comes in the bridge that I actually think works. But that's another track that maybe structurally and just in the context of the album doesn't add a whole lot, but I still like that one. The lyrics and the vocals are always a highlight for a Lamb of God record for me. I love how Randy's lyric writing really does take like modern influences, and he talks about real world things. These songs are all pretty distinguishable as far as what he's actually saying. Of course, his vocal performance is always a highlight too. He's one of the just purely most dynamic vocalists in metal today. The album sounds like Lamb of God, but it also sounds modern at the same time, both in its style, how it incorporates things like the breakdowns, but also in its production. This is definitely one of the better and maybe even best sounding Lamb of God records in their catalog. Overall, this album is a great return to more inspired and innovative songwriting. And overall, I'm very happy with it. For all those reasons, I'm going to score this album a 26 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to subscribe for more rock and metal-related content and album reviews. Comment below what are your thoughts on this album. Give the video a like. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.